Thanks so much, Carlo, and I appreciate the opportunity here to speak to everyone. So Angkor Resources, we are a resource optimizer. That means we leverage our natural resources and look to cash flow on a short-term basis in the resource sector. Of course, standard disclaimer, we are a publicly traded company. All of our public filings are on SEDAR. So as far as management, I've been with the company for 12 years, but CEO for the last 5 or 6 months. I have over 30 years of experience across several continents in corporate structure, finance, and international development. Mike Weeks is our Executive VP of Operations. He's had over 40 years in the resource sector. He's a first-class power engineer, and we've been active in Cambodia for the last 12 years. Dennis Ouellette is our VP of Exploration. Dennis has worked on several continents, lots of experience in Northern Canada, and has been with us and lives in country in Cambodia, which is a big plus. And Benita Sauer is a partner with MNP and our CFO. So a really quick snapshot. We've been involved in Cambodia and Southeast Asia for 12 years. We are identified as a leader in minerals and energy, oil and gas. We discovered the first copper porphyry in Cambodia when we were told there were none. We have implemented the first ESG platforms, environmental social governance, since 2009 and have led the way in the resource sector doing that since then. We've also discovered 2 underground gold deposits in Ratanakiri province, where our projects are. One of them was sold for a straight cash deal, and the other one was sold to an Indian company called Mesco. We took a cash and a net smelter royalty that was very favorable. We are still waiting for that mine to produce. The mine is built, but it's not producing at this time because they don't have the processing equipment. We have been recognized at the United Nations for several years, and I have had the opportunity to speak to representatives of 55 nations on a forward-thinking model for the resource sector that ensures benefits for all the stakeholders. Ultimately, 6 months ago, we undertook a corporate strategic review of the company, and that has changed a great deal about the progress that we're making currently. So what does that do? It's made us a resource optimizer. Our goal is to build shareholder value. I am not a scientist. I am a businesswoman. I take the best of our technical team, the best of our finance, the best of our environmental and social, and we wrap it together. We find opportunities in the resource sector that will fast track us to cash flow. We minimize dilution. We work with teams that are already in place that perhaps are lacking one area. Angkor comes in as a complementary skill set, and then we maximize best practices. And of course, we identify and target really strong ESG platforms, market appeal, and those projects that are quickly achievable. So what does that mean? We believe it equals to a great opportunity to move into the stock at a low price. I think between this week, we were running between 10 and 11 cents. It means that participants get the opportunity to come in on a joint venture on a particular prospect, on a project, or on a whole license. There's lots of flexibility there, so you are in a position where you make a positive change maker while you have a healthy rate of return. So why is that attractive? And why would people want to invest in our company? Because we as management have bucked up ourselves. We put our money where our mouth is. We own over 25% of the shares, so if we have roughly 155 million shares, management would have between 38 and 40 million of those. So we have become heavily vested to move this company forward. We have close friends and family. When we add to that, that bumps it up to over 60 million shares are held with insiders, and friends and family. And this presentation is going to give you a glimpse of our new corporate runway. And that's going to show you what you can expect in 3 months, 6 months, and in 12 months. And ultimately, I think we've built out a runway for success that I'm pleased to share with you. So energy and minerals, they're necessities of daily living. And we, especially in developed countries, have an expectation and we cannot live without them. Therefore, it is so important that we make sure that we are exploring and developing our energy and our minerals in the most sustainable manner possible. Angkor Resources is the first North American publicly traded company in Cambodia. We seek project and resource optimization right across Southeast Asia and in Canada. We select strong partners that help us advance to meet those goals. So why Cambodia? People have said, what are you doing there? And why would it be that nation? Cambodia has several advantages. One of them is it's had a very strong GDP for the last several years. It has good infrastructure in place now. 10 years ago, I couldn't say that. But today, you can drive anywhere on the country on well-paved roads. The power grid has been improved tremendously. The country itself is underexplored and is highly prospective, and it's surrounded by countries with large energy and mineral developments. There's a low-cost operating environment and a very modern governance when it comes to mineral and the energy sectors. A 30% profit tax rate makes it an attractive fiscal regime. And this is a big one. There's no foreign ownership restriction. So we get to own 100% of our projects. No free carry project requirement either. So as you look around Cambodia's surrounding countries, there's significant mineral and energy and oil and gas developments in those countries. So we're pocketed right in the middle. The first commercial mine is Okvau right there. We are 150 kilometers north of it. So our mineral assets, currently we are very close to the Vietnam border. We're about an hour and a half drive on our projects. The green area is Oya Deo North. Oya Deo North sits directly north of the Mesco mine site, which, like I said, the mine is built. These veins run north, south, and are open to depth. So it's got a great prospect sitting on Oya Deo North that we call Pum Sarong North, and another one with rare earths further north of that. The magenta license called Andong Mia, right here, currently has copper gold porphyries on it, gold epithermal veins, and we are currently looking at rare earth elements right across a large section. So both have multiple prospects with a variety of mineralization on them. And on the energy side, Cambodia has no onshore oil and gas of its own. We have a very, very strong background in that as well within our team. So we take a look at the traditional methods, the transitional energy opportunities, and move to renewables. Block 8 was our first choice right across the country. We did a survey of 33 different licenses that are available, and we are now finalizing the production sharing agreement on Block 8. Ultimately, looking at energy means we have to be innovative. We have to look forward at the same time that we're trying to serve our population and make sure that energy is both affordable and accessible. And that includes anything from taking gas from landfills and converting it to energy, or moving from more renewable solar grids to or solar power to the existing power grids. Environmental social governance. We make it real. We walk the talk. And this has been part of our platform right since 2009. It's part of the way we do business, and it is not considered an extra. So ultimately, we've led the way with education solutions, water, health solutions, and economic development, small business opportunities. So the real basics of first aid, CPR, are something that just was not in the country. So we've been pleased to be able to provide that kind of opportunity and skill set, not just to our staff, but also to levels of government. And one of the first questions we are asked in the rural communities is, can you teach our children English and computers? Because those are areas that they just do not receive any instruction in at this time. So we have a small training center, run several classes each day when they're not in public school to meet those needs. We also follow the United Nations 17 Sustainable Goals, including looking at economic solutions with local opportunities and making sure that we've touched and covered gender opportunities. So that might include women working in the bamboo value-added industries or learning how to package food properly. Relationships are absolutely paramount. And working with various levels of government, right from the local village leaders to the provincial, federal levels, right to the top. We would be nowhere without our relationships. So we started back in 2009, and we continue with them every step of the way. We were also really honored to speak at the United Nations about sustainability and how to move it forward, especially in developing countries, so that there are benefits for everyone, and we're looking after the environment at the same time. Something of which we're very proud of is we have developed last year Cambodia's first cradle-to-grave agreement with their Indigenous communities. We have roughly 45% of the Indigenous communities of the country in Ratanakiri province. So we've been dealing with them for a decade. But this agreement allows us to work directly with them on their lands, negotiating what they want to see. And it's right from prospecting, exploration, development, production, reclamation. So the entire cycle. So ultimately, when we do any transaction, our deals are going to have a number of qualities. One of them is going to be that it's going to have very significant ESG principles. We think ESG is a great tool to have in our toolbox, because when we have a large mineralization or a large source of energy, it means that the foundation of the company is that much stronger. We've already got the social part of the license in place. And frankly, it's just the right thing to do, in our opinion. And that's the way we've operated from day one. So really strong ESG. There will also be some work, infrastructure, and operations already in place that need some additional assistance or some voids filled to make that project successful. Our projects are going to have a shorter term to cash flow, and I refer to the one that we've just completed, which is a carbon capture. Instead of having several million cubic feet per day being emitted into the atmosphere, we've undertaken a project to fund and capture that gas, put it through a pipeline, scrub it, and turn it into a clean natural gas energy source. So that we expect will take 3 months to implement. And that's what I mean by shorter term. And we're going to minimize dilution. Dilution is fine as long as it brings you, the investor, strong value. But if we don't have to dilute and there's other ways of funding a project, then we certainly take a strong look at that. So ultimately, you can expect in 3 to 12 months that we're going to continue with our mantra saying this is about people, planet, profit, and of course, peace. So at the end of the day, not only do we want to make you money, but we want to make sure that you're very proud of how you made your money. And that's very, very important to us. So what can you expect in the next 90 days from Angkor Resources? Ultimately, we've closed that first deal. That's the carbon capture that I just described. We're going to move our energy and the oil and gas forward because, as I said earlier, Cambodia has no source of energy, oil and gas itself, so it's been importing. We are going to acquire an additional license for a large copper gold porphyry that is already drilled. At the same time, we're going to follow our philosophy of ESG. Now on share volume, we're looking for a minimum of 40 to 80,000 shares traded each day. And we're looking within 90 days to be 18 cents or more. I think we have the deals put together and the news to support that. In 6 months, what can you expect? We will be closing another cash flow generating deal in the resource sector. We will complete some agreement to take that mine that was just south of our Oyadeo North project to get that mine moving into production. So what we need there is to bring in processing equipment and smelting equipment. The mine we can operate the mine very shortly, but the smelting and the processing equipment will take several months before it's there and commissioned. So our plan would be to mine it, bring the ore to the surface so that it's ready, and we could have 30,000 tons on the ground when we start processing. We will also pursue an energy from waste landfill solution in Cambodia to provide a solution to a large landfill and an energy solution as well. We will look to raise $2 to $4 million Canadian, and our daily volume, we want to increase that up to a minimum of 100,000 shares traded daily and a share price of 25 cents. So if you look at us today, this is what it looks like. We've got our subsidiary, our mineral subsidiary is Angkor Gold Cambodia. It's holding 2 exploration licenses, which you've seen. And we have our energy subsidiary, which is Enercam. Enercam Canada has acquired a carbon capture project, which is being commissioned now. And the subsidiary is looking at Block 8 onshore. This is what I think you're going to see in 12 months. The 4 green areas are cash flowing projects of various levels. So the first one to cash flow will be this carbon capture in Canada. It will probably bring in roughly 45,000 a month. It's not a huge project, but it's a very effective environmental solution. We're also going to bring in that additional license that I mentioned. We have a project in the Philippines that we are in negotiations currently. We had announced it back in the fall, and ultimately it was shut down, or it was delayed somewhat in early December because of the restrictions and the Omicron. So we find that across the globe. We are coming up with a different solution that will remove millions of yards of sand out of a river. And ultimately, there's an alluvial gold there as well. So we've got those 3 projects, and then of course the Poomsaurang mine coming into production. This will not be a quick cash flow, because ultimately I'm guessing with supply chains, we need to be prepared for some delays in getting that processing and smelting equipment in. But ultimately, any one of these 4 cash flows, and we're aiming to do 1 per quarter. So this one is already in place, our carbon capture. I honestly expect this one will be complete this quarter as well. And this one will probably be in second quarter. So any one of these contribute to our market cap. So what does that leave us with? Well, I think it's a great opportunity. Here we are, early in a brand new runway for the company. You've now seen what you can expect in 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. You know we have a very strong vested interest in our company, and that we have every motivation to move that forward. And there's multiple deals, whether they're on a prospect or a license, and you can play a role in making a difference. So people, planet, profit. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I'm really happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you for that, Delayne. I was going to start to ask you the first question, and that is, given that you are the first North American company in the area, who would be your competitors?
We don't even think of them as competitors, but we have Australian players in the country, and Okvau is managed by, the Okvau mine is managed by Emerald or Renaissance, Australian company, been in the country for 6 or 7 years. We've had a number of other Canadian companies, but actually they approach us to work with us rather than starting off on their own in the country. So I'm sorry, I wouldn't call them competitors at all. We have a mineral association in Cambodia, and it's a bit of because the country is still quite open for all sorts of development, it's in our best interest to see the sector move forward, and there certainly is plenty of opportunity for that.
So basically, we should regard them as partner, and they would regard you as a partner because you've been there so long on the ground.
I would think so, yes. Mm-hmm.
Could I just ask you about, and forgive me for my pronunciation here, Poomsaurang, is that correct pronunciation?
That's very well done. I'm impressed.
Thank you. NSR cash sale, and if some sliding there, and some sort of continuous dividend here. What's the genius behind that? Is that what we should look for? A development and a sale, lease back or whatever? Sure.
Ultimately, I think what we can look towards, we've got some. Well, let's start with the Poomsaurang mine. It has a very healthy net smelter royalty on it. So we do that on a floating rate. Today's price, we would be at a 6% royalty on production, which is very, very significant. Now, we did that for 2 reasons. We didn't take a lot of cash up front, and we wanted to see that go into production. So that as we move forward gives us a continuing source of revenue, but also the opportunity that if we are not taken out as an entity, as a company, then we would be looking at paying dividends back to investors in due course, certainly. So I would expect, with copper being the position that it's in globally, I think there's real attraction for several of our copper gold plays. And of course, rare earths are always an attractive commodity because there's been such a a stranglehold on the majority of them in China. So if we can prove that we've got economic quantity, and we're looking at that across both the Andong Mia and the Oyadeo North license, then there's also I think a very strong opportunity there. And of course, we would look to North American companies to work with on that.
Well, thank you for that, and it's sort of a proof of your cash flow philosophy, I guess. What about the cost inflation? Is there any bottlenecks that you experience now, like in skilled workforce, gear, or anywhere else?
Well, fortunately, in Cambodia, no. In Canada, yes, but the projects that we do in Canada already have a full team in place. So we were just providing a little bit of expertise and some funding to move those forward quickly. But in Asia, we're finding no issues with acquiring staff. I think management for any project in a nation that is where a sector is new, it takes a while to train up management. But we're really proud of. 95% of our team are local Khmer people that have worked with us for over a decade. They're well trained. They know exactly what to do, and even when we moved down to the offshore energy, we speak regularly about saying, you know what, these people are top notch. So when we need logistics people, they're there. They also have improved tremendously. Institute of Technology in Cambodia, ITC, and it is for the natural resource sector. So we see a lot of young professionals coming out of there, and they're happy to get the experience with our teams and with us. So we haven't seen difficulty in getting personnel. Look, it's a foreign country, and you have to have a little bit of a sense of adventure if you're going to go work there for 2 or 3 years as an expat. But ultimately, we haven't had any difficulty to date. So far, so good.
And if I can just tag along with another question here, and then how do you keep your key staff? And I was particularly interested in the ESG approach, because you seem to have the approach on a horizontal level, EI from the minister all the way down, or rather top down from the village all the way up. That requires skilled, a competence within the company. How do you keep that?
Well, like I said earlier, Carlo, it's been part of our philosophy right before we even went. We said, if we're going in there, let's make sure that we're going to be making a difference in a positive way and try to listen to their needs, but also bring whatever we can to the table that would meet their social and environmental elements. So I know it sounds almost flippant, but it's just part of everyday. It's just part of our everyday work, and it's not a. It's just. I worked in social development on a whole variety of humanitarian projects for 15 years before we were in Cambodia, and then in other nations, and went, the best way forward here is to empower people so that they can look after their own needs as far as getting their kids to school and making sure they've got proper food. And repeatedly, we will see, if you can put people to work, even if they're only earning $150 a month, they send their kids to school. They don't send them to work. They make sure that they've got access to healthcare. So it takes so little. And because there's no social net in place, it's not like somebody's going to pay them social benefits if they're not working. It takes very little to say, ladies, instead of picking these cashews and getting $1 a kilogram, we could value add them, and suddenly you get $4 or $5 a kilogram. And it doesn't take anything out of the way when we're out exploring in their fields to do projects like that. So how do we keep it? It's part of everyday life for us, Carlo. The ESG is paramount. It's not about doing business. It's about how we do business. And it's so important to us at this point in our lives to make sure that we leave a legacy where we've made it better than when we arrived.
Well, thank you for that, Delayne. So basically, Angkor Resources, it's pays to be a good citizen, seems to be the business idea going forward. Interesting and unique. Well, so if there is any more questions and inquiries, then obviously you had your email at the end of the presentation. So thank you very much, and good luck, and good continuous of the first of this day, because you've been up quite early, I take it.
Well, thanks very much, Carlo, and yeah, you have a great day as well.